24 minutes after the hour now, and we are back with a Fox News alert. ISIS now claiming responsibility for the horrific attack in Barcelona. So, how can law enforcement and the intelligence community catch these types of attacks before they happen? Joining me now, Jim Hansen, president of Security Studies, who has conducted counterterrorism operations in the U.S. Army, and Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, CIA intelligence officer and a senior fellow for the London Center for Policy Research. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Instead of trying to analyze what happened, I want to talk to you about how we can protect ourselves here in the U.S. So the base question is, when you have an attack like this, using a van that anybody can go out and buy, can we prevent these types of attacks here in the U.S.?
Well, I'll say the first thing that we need to look at is the fact that Europe is reaping the hellish reward of having open borders and no control over who's coming in and moving around in their countries. You know, they brought in boatloads of people who don't share their values, and now those people are, unsurprisingly, conducting attacks and trying to push that agenda. You know, it points out the value of President Trump's executive order, which is commonly called the travel ban, but it also added a call for our security agencies to conduct what he called extreme vetting, making sure that we're not letting people in who have jihadist ties, who have Islamist tendencies, because those people have no business coming into our country. So we need to support that as those agencies start to conduct these kind of checks.
Okay, Tony, I'll ask you now, with all that in mind, let's assume that we can do that here in the U.S. Let's assume that we can close off the borders in the way that President Trump and a travel ban is proposing. Can we still stop these attacks from those that are already within our borders?
Well, as Jim said, it's a good beginning, but no, the networks which are going to conduct those attacks are already here in some form. We've recognized that there's been weakness in our system. That's why we now, a bit after the fact, have done the travel ban. There's two things we have to do that can be effective in countering this sort of thing. First, aggressive application of human intelligence. Look, Mike Pompeo, clearly over at CIA, is already making a difference by the fact that CIA did give some level of accurate warning to the Spanish. We need to expand that. The way you defeat a network is by penetrating it. You do it by old-fashioned clandestine human intelligence or spying. I mean, that's what you got to get back into. Do it aggressively. Secondly, law enforcement and those organizations need the intelligence to be effective. There's always observables. All these things that just happened in Spain, there was some level of rehearsal at some point. Those things can be seen if law enforcement knows where to look and when to look. So the two things together are key to getting ahead of this. We're defeating ISIS in other places. Unfortunately, we had Snowden and others compromise our ability to spy on these folks. So therefore, the other piece of this is social media. They often telegraph and communicate via social media. So those three things together can be used, but it's a matter of political will and letting all these agencies, as Jim said, work together to make us safe.
And that's a great point. Jim, I have a question to follow up for you. Over the course of the next 24, 48 hours, I guarantee on other networks you hear the phrase civil rights. We can't violate people's civil rights in the effort to get this information. How do you respond to those critics?
Civil rights are vital. That's part of the free Western culture that we want to preserve. But when you're talking about people who don't share those values and are trying to undermine them, you have to be a little bit aggressive. Still within the bounds of whatever the Constitution is in your country, and we expect them, though, to be aggressive in pushing that. One of the problems they have, in Europe especially, is a lack of assimilation by the migrants who are coming in. They're not joining the culture of the countries they're going to, and consequently, they have their own private communities. The police, as Tony mentions, are going to have to put informants in there. They're going to have to use human intelligence in the mosques, in those communities, to find these people, because we want to stop them before a terrorist attack, not be looking for more afterwards.
If I'm waking up this morning and hearing this discussion, I have a family at home, I'm worried about them. Are you confident with the parameters and what we have in place in our government, in our security operations? Are we safe today, or should we be worried that something like this could happen here in the U.S.?
Look, you need to always be cognizant of the threat. Look, I walk around in New York, I walk around in Washington, I'm always worried about something happening. Situational awareness, you personally taking responsibility for yourself, there's never any substitute for that. With that said, no, the law enforcement is not there. FBI, the Joint Terrorism Task Forces are failing. NYPD, right there, NYPD, counterterrorism, SHIELD, Intel, they're doing everything they can to help do a nationwide network to help people talk to each other and share information. We're not there yet. I mean, some of us Look, I work for Sheriff Dave Decatur down in Stafford County as his Homeland Security advisor. I'm a volunteer. We all have to do everything we can individually to help the collective do better. We can do better. We should do better, but we're not there yet.
And we heard Jim's opinion on open borders. Tony, I want to give you last word on the open borders discussion. Were they to blame for what just happened in Barcelona?
Oh, absolutely. Spain? No doubt. Jim is completely correct on that. Look, we have whole communities, when they are not assimilated, even if they're not pro-terrorist, they become terrorist safe havens and allow this to happen. So we need to look at that seriously. We need to be very clear about who we bring in. They need to be people who don't want to kill us or other Muslims. They need to be people who are pro-United States.
Gentlemen, an important but nevertheless frightening discussion. Thank you so much for taking the time.